All right, we're back with Adam Schaeffer at the Downhill Zone in Issaquah, Washington.
Hi, Paul.
Right next to Tiger Mountain, some of the best riding you're going to find in the Pacific Northwest. And we're looking at the arrival of the arrival. Adam's got it all built now.
Arrival.
The arrival of the arrival.
Today's the day.
Duff is our consulting dog on this project.
Yeah. He seems to like it.
He loves it.
He's drawn to it.
Likes that finish.
Yeah.
Hey, so Adam got it all built up, and you know, out of the box it didn't look like there was that much to the build, but Adam, you were telling me that you had to do some tweaks, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, these are the particulars of getting a bike that is nearly built out of the box. And so that's a love-hate thing in the industry. You know, from a shop side, you can tend to like it because on the surface, it appears that there's very little work to be done to deliver the bike. You know, oh yeah, you just put the bar and the controls on, put the wheel in, it's good to go. And it depends on where your standards lie. So I had some issues with the shifting not working as well as I would have liked, especially for an X01 level drivetrain. You know, just some subtleties. The cassette was not fully installed on the driver, so that was affecting it a little bit.
Okay.
I ended up actually swapping out the entire cable and housing from new because it felt sticky. I don't know if there was a kink somewhere.
And heads up, that is a little tricky because the openings are narrow and there's no.
So it's interesting.
Routing.
In the tube, there's two different like cavities. That the brake goes down one side and the drivetrain goes down the other, but they're open, so they're not really guided. They're kind of guided. You know, you still want to use an internal cable routing fishing line kit from Park, you know, to help guide the stuff through the process. The swing arm is probably the more challenging aspect. One, this hole is quite tight. Two, the bend that the housing takes to exit this port down here is extremely sharp. And that also might be contributing to some of the friction in the drivetrain, just how sharp the cable has to drop down out of the down tube and then back up into the swing arm. But once I kind of got it all replaced and sorted out, it's shifting great now, so yeah. I'm happy with it. You know, other than that, you know, the rest of it was pretty straightforward. You know, just getting the suspension kind of set up and dialed in.
Right.
You know.
And you were pointing out this little touch right there.
Yeah, I like it. I like it when companies are kind of go that extra step to create, you know, some character to a carbon design, because they have the ability to. If they're cutting a mold, they can cut any shape they want. Right. So, you know, lines like this up here, this you could call it almost a shoulder. This setup here, and then how it is complemented here, so it actually creates this kind of X shape. Right. You know, stuff like that to me is very aesthetically pleasing, because it almost like a car has lines, you know, along its you know, its frame. You can create a more muscular profile. You can create a much more dynamic appearance than just a blank shape, which is obviously easier to design and manufacture, but it's not as interesting, you know. Right. It's not as appealing. Even, you know, even this stuff here, where they created these lines here. Again, it creates a character.
Is there anything beyond form in that, or is there a function as well?
I mean, you could maybe argue for sure that the shape could create some you know, stiffness this way and compliance this way because it's a little wider than it is thick. But I mean, in reality, with carbon, so much of that is going to be determined by what it looks like on the inside. How many plies they put in, what's the layup look like. You know, that's kind of one of the magic aspects of carbon, is that you can have it look one way on the outside, and then you can completely control what it looks like on the inside to dictate its structure and its performance and its weight and other factors. So that's hard to say whether or not this actually has much of a gain in performance. Sure does look cool though.
Yeah. No, the first thing that struck me when I saw this was industrial design. Yeah. You know, Apple is great at it. Tesla, you think of a few companies.
I don't know. I'd debate Tesla.
All right. Well, anyway.
little soft, little round for my preferences.
You don't like the recessed handles, door handles on the Tesla?
I mean, that stuff is clever. You know, there's a lot of novelty in those products, but this one, to me, like I said, this has a very muscular appearance to it.
Yeah, but you know, bikes companies don't normally, you don't think of them as focusing on that, except for, you know, Roxy Lowe with the original Ibis Mojo. That was a striking design, I thought. And Evil and Yeti, they seem to put a little effort into it too, but
maybe.
Lot.
I mean, this one for sure has a lot. There's a lot to this.
Yeah, I mean, rear triangle's really distinctive.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I mean, I would say that there's some certain pivot models that share some, like the some of the older Firebird 29 and their downhill bikes, both the current Phoenix DH29 and the previous 27.5 or even the 26-inch one, which looked very similar to this.
Yeah,
there was a lot of really kind of meaty industrial design to some of their models.
Right.
But yeah, this one has
it's
quite
good.
a lot.
It's great on fit and finish too, which a lot of, you know, sometimes fit and finish isn't the greatest in the bike industry.
Right.
But these guys seem to have really put a lot of thought into it.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, you know, again, I'm always going to argue against internal cable routing, and I will die on that hill, and people can give me any kind of argument they want, but it's not better for anybody. Yeah. Really, it's not better for the consumer if they do their own work. It's not better for the mechanic if they do the work. I don't know. I wrestle with it.
Look at the tie bits
but yes,
the machining.
Yeah, there's actually
everything's recessed.
So there's actually some really nice. I don't know if it'll even pick up. Maybe the flashlight will help. You can see they actually did leave their machine marks here, kind of a la Hope or Cascade Components. You know, this is that kind of ball end finish that we call it, where they don't go to a pure, like up on the top here, the top has a finer grain, a finer finish, but they left some of that machining mark, and this is almost harder to program because the ball end has to follow this pattern. So that kind of stuff actually is a machinist showing their skill in the ability to program this level of detail. You can see it down here, how it kind of follows the profile of the bearing bore. It gets tight and then it gets bigger as it goes across. Wow. So there's some really nice, even here, if you look inside that link, if you can see that pocket that they use to save weight, you can see how beautifully that is profiled in that last final step of the machine. So there's some really, really nice subtle touches. It's stuff that you really would have to get up close to catch. Yes, the hardware has its own concave washer, basically, and these are going to be a flathead design, which then, you know, on the surface everything is just perfectly smooth. Same with
here, with the
same with the axle. We had talked about that in the unboxing. So it already has a concave machined into it, and then the axle has an angled head to it. And so basically this piece is just there essentially as a glorified washer, but the way it's shaped like this allows it to not pivot or move, and so it just stays where it's going to be. And then on the other side, it has a mirror shape with the threading in it. So this is essentially your nut. But because it's shaped like this, it can't move in the frame.
Right.
So they just lock each other together. But you get this nice clean finish with nothing poking out.
Does that come out?
It could,
or is it just?
It's replaceable. Yeah, which is great. You know, I mean, that's a big burly thread, and I doubt anybody would ever strip it. But in the worst case scenario, I always do like to see something like that be a consumable, and you know, so then you don't have to replace your whole swing arm. Right. You know, so yeah, that kind of stuff I like.
Yeah.
I'd rather have it be a cheap part.
Yeah, and the chain guard runs all the way up into the.
Yeah, pretty good coverage, pretty comprehensive. I like that. You know, some companies cut them short, and then I end up having to, you know, use some kind of a wrap or something extra to get a bit more protection. But out of the box, this one looks pretty good. It's also got one here on the underside, which is also a nice touch. Most companies.
Oh well.
Some companies do this, some companies don't. This is an important one. It really is with how big modern cassettes are. you know, you do need coverage on the inside of the seat stick.
And are they going to put a chain guard on here? Or
you know, it looks like there's a keyway system. Again, I can help you out here. If you look down from the top, you can see there's some notches poking out there underneath the bottom bracket. So that to me looks like they're going to have a keyed ISCG mount available. It did not come with one. I have not seen one kind of offered or advertised, but that's the vibe I get looking at that, is that they're going to have a keyed system that'll just go on, and then the BB will pinch it to the frame. Because yeah, I mean, that is something that a bike like this, if it was me, I would want a chain guide on it. Right. For sure.
Right. And is this, oh, again, you pointed out you can see the carbon.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see it a little better there with some light on it. Yeah. And so and then you can see it fade into the Cerakote here. Yeah. And so yeah, Cerakote is a bake-on. It's a low temperature bake-on coating, which is more appropriate for carbon fiber because it's not going to affect the resin. It's not hot enough. Whereas that's why most carbon is not powder coated, because the oven is too hot and it can distort the resin.
And this is open on a lot of frames, but they kept it closed.
Oh,
strength.
Well, on carbon, yeah, I guess some frames do a bridge. It's more popular on aluminum, you know, because of you know, you're saving material. Right. You know, on carbon you can just kind of make a fin. But there are some frames that do split it. Yeah, Specialized, some of theirs I think have a split to them.
I think my Spot does.
That Evil up there, yeah, I guess that's true. Yeah. That could be a visual thing. I sometimes like just a simple bridge with an opening. I think it creates a bit of, I don't know, kind of an interesting structural detail, a nice visual. Right. But yeah, the fin also works too.
And this is you said this is their seat
print? It looks to me like, I don't notice any kind of branding.
No branding.
It doesn't look like those classic DKs that, you know, that come on everything from Taiwan. You know, it looks made in-house. It has a very nice kind of chamfered profile. Again, the bolt looks potentially titanium. Looks like a very high quality grade of bolt. So even down to that detail, I would not be surprised if they made that one also, because it really does. The anodizing finish, the bolts, they almost look identical to the links here. So I think
yeah, I hope it comes across in the video how clean this thing is. Everything just looks so finished, you know.
Yeah, basically. You know, you can tell they spent a lot of time doing this. Even the brake mount, this is their own design. You know, and they also say that they're going to have a 203 option, but this piece here is their own separate deal. Right. And then, you know, then the caliper bolts to that. So yeah, they decided, I guess they didn't feel like the post mount standard was something that they wanted to follow. At least in the actual frame design, maybe they felt like they could do a better job of just keeping it low profile and tight. I kind of agree. I don't like the look of the tabs just kind of poking up out of the rear end of a lot of bikes. So this to me does create a just kind of a more streamlined look.
And you added some taping here.
Just a few high wear spots, you know. I mean, there is a ride wrap available for this bike. Yeah. You know, but
and the finish didn't give you a problem at all. They say that Cerakote can be.
Well, again, I haven't tried the ride wrap on it, but this stuff that I use is All-Star Performance. It's like a helicopter tape, and so it's adhesive backed, and it just seems to go right on. I mean, you clean the finish. You know, you just dry it, make sure it's dry, and then so you know we got some here inside of the triangle where the tire is going to pass by, a little bit on the link even. I put a piece on the link just to keep it from getting any rock strikes, and then yeah, the down tube is a very common spot.
Yeah, you pointed out the down tube is not open.
This part here,
there's no shelf really for the you know, gunk to collect underneath the shock like this is open.
Yeah, I mean, you still might get some just kind of randomly getting in there, but that'll be minor. Right. That'll be minor. Yeah. I mean, yeah, this is their little fender here is nice. I mean, I would have liked to see a little bit more all the way, like something that went all the way down. You know, with just a little bit, you know, almost just a full cover on the tire.
A little more, yeah.
You know, and I still think
you tried to fit something in, but
it's a little tight. It's a little tight. I mean, yeah, I still think that's an area where the industry is still kind of, they're getting better, but I'd like to see bikes of this quality and this price point. If you go look at something from the dirt bike world that costs the same with a motor in it, they have gone to such little details of putting fenders and plastics and protectors everywhere on a dirt bike. I mean, it comes from the factory, and all the common spots where they're going to get dirt and rocks and roost, they're all covered already.
Yeah.
You don't have to, faff around with your own inventions to try to protect it, because that's where it should be done. It should be done by the people who are engineering it, who have the capability to go get plastics molded and get the hardware designed and do everything. So yeah, that's still one area where I feel like a lot of brands could find more ways to compete with each other. Yeah. I mean, I want something that's just good, ready to go. I mean, it gives me work to do to dream up, frame protection and fenders and try to figure out how we're going to make something more sustainable for the long term. Because it's a dirty, harsh environment. These are not street motorcycles. Like, they live in the woods. They need to be protected as such.
And the trails aren't baby smooth like they used to be either, by any means. So.
Well, especially if you ride year round, fenders and frame protection are serious business.
Oh yeah, definitely here.
Yeah, it's really important to make sure that everything is protected, because you'll really accelerate your wear. You'll kill your frame bearings faster. It's all that stuff wears out quicker. So it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, props to Fox for coming up with this kind of thing.
Yeah. Bolts on. It's a little longer coverage.
And it's their own design. It's got clean hardware mounting for it. It's big. They finally made a big one. The stock one was really small originally.
Well, from a user standpoint, it comes on an awful lot easier.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it also looks cool.
Yeah.
It just looks burly.
Right.
Although I've heard that. So a customer of mine said that the one on the 40, there were certain bike parks that they went to. Hey, how's it going? Good.
And just need a last name.
Schaeffer.
Schaeffer, great.
Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, there were certain bike parks that they went to that said they wouldn't put the bike on the lift with the bolt-on fender because it was too rigid, and it was like a risk of contacting the way that it was mounted onto the chairlift.
Oh,
they told them they had to put like the soft floppy ones on.
Oh God.
But besides that,
the
fender itself is very well done.
So
and then the
cockpit,
right?
It's really.
And I ended up kind
minimalist. I mean,
reorienting a little bit, here. But yeah, it's
those are
and they T25s. Yep, just like your rotor bolts. Same with here. And this came pre-assembled from them.
Right.
And I imagine that they have some kind of a plastic or wood spreading tool to get this bar in here.
Okay.
So it can follow the bend.
Right.
Without scratching it.
Okay.
I know that's what Intend does. There's a brand in Germany called Intend, and they have.
Does that mean you can't take it on and off very easy?
The bar?
Yeah.
Why would you want to take the bar off easily?
I don't know.
Well, yeah. Taking the bar off is an involved process. I mean, well, sure, but like, it's not something you need to be able to do rapidly before a ride.
No.
That's a more kind of thought out swap.
It's got the shim underneath it, you said.
Yeah, but I believe that's bonded to the bar.
It is bonded.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's not something that's going to come off or move around. Yeah. But you're going to need something that probably can flare these open a bit as it makes the bend to get it through the stem.
Yeah,
and like I said, that's what when you buy the Intend stem, they actually ship it with this wooden kind of like paddle looking thing, and that's what they design. They wedge it in there and you flare it open, but it's wood so it doesn't damage it.
Okay.
I would probably be looking at something like a tire lever, something plastic.
Yeah.
That you can get in there and kind of spread those open a bit.
Yeah, not the screwdriver.
Nope.
All right. Now the only things usually, Adam, I get the frame or I get a bike and I start replacing stuff. On this one, there's just not a whole lot to work with. I mean, I did put a different saddle on because saddle comes with it, fine saddle, but it's 300 grams. This one's only 175, so I wanted the lighter weight.
We swapped out the grips.
I go with the
we added some.
ergons.
Obviously, the bike doesn't come with pedals. We put pedals on.
Right.
The only other thing, we did add some crank boots.
You did?
These did not come with crank boots.
All right.
Which I don't know why the industry does that, but a lot of brands ship bikes with carbon cranks without boots, and maybe they think that you want to do some colors or whatever else,
Right,
but it's
right.
dumb. They're cheap. They should just come with them.
Right.
You know, because you just shouldn't be riding carbon cranks without boots. It's kind of it's a simple bit of protection that goes a long way, especially on a bike this low.
And I'm going to give the Maguras a chance.
I think they feel really nice.
I had Maguras early on. I actually had an early set of the Martas. Remember those guys?
I do remember.
And in fact, the caliper Martas I had on one of my first suspension bikes. And eventually, too much bleeding.
But you got to throw that out the window.
Okay.
I mean, it's so long ago.
Yeah, I know it is.
Yeah,
I know.
And
it's
they've gone
ages.
through several different generations of products since then. These
The lever is pretty radical.
yeah, so these are an MT5, but they're putting a different blade on from stock. If you buy a normal MT5 from Magura, you're gonna get their, like, out of the box. If you buy an aftermarket version of it, you're gonna get their 2-finger blade. It's gonna look like this.
Oh, okay.
So it's significantly longer, and it's got a much more subtle hook to it.
Right.
So that's kind of what the 5 looks like when you buy it aftermarket.
Okay.
But, you know, OE manufacturers like WeAreOne, if they're buying a batch of brakes, they can just specify what they want. And it looks like they specified, this is what's called the HC lever. So it's more of a 1-finger. You could still call it a 2-finger, but
Right.
that one you could almost call a 2 or a 3.
Right.
This one is just shorter, and it's got a more pronounced hook to it.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, but it does also have a different actuator
really?
than this one does. And so I'm also wondering if maybe it has a slightly different feel to the power delivery. You know, but to me, it's got a very nice amount of lever throw right out of the box. You know, it's short without being like, just zero modulation. You know,
Right.
there's an operating window here.
Yeah.
But it's short enough that you could actually still bring this in even a little bit more if you wanted these really close to the bar, like a lot of people do.
Can you adjust the bite point or?
Only the reach position on the
Just the reach,
5s.
okay.
And with you got a 3mm Allen key here.
Yeah.
You know, there is on the 7s, depending on the lever assembly, sometimes you're going to get a bite point adjustment. To be honest, on Maguras, at least even with the 5s, out of the box, the bite point is pretty short.
Okay.
It's pretty snappy.
Yeah.
So, and to the point where the calipers can sometimes be difficult to get aligned on the rotor because the pads just sit really close to the rotor, and
I've
that's
heard
how
that.
they achieve that short stroke.
Yep.
It's not through any kind of leverage or wizardry. They just put the pads right next to the rotor, and you got to make sure that the rotors are straight and true.
Yeah.
So I don't know if they're really going to need that. The other thing they do out of the box is that this is an all-black caliper. There's none of the cover plates. So out of the box, they ship with a
right.
silver cover plate.
Yeah.
It looks like they just didn't install any cover plates. They just left them bare.
Yeah.
You know, so a little bit of a unique
Yeah.
setup there versus stock, but
Yeah.
I think it's a nice choice.
Cleaner.
The modern Maguras seem to work really well. They have good power, and now there's several aftermarket pad options available if you don't like the stock pads. So the stock 5 pads are 1 piece on each side,
Okay.
but the 5 calipers have the holes in the drillings to take the MT7 pads, which are 4 individual pads, 1 on each piston with pins going through, and you can take any 7 pad and put it in this 5 caliper. So if you decide that you don't like how these pads feel, or once they're worn out you want to try something different, I have a couple different options from Galfer,
Okay.
which are a little thicker so they last longer,
Yeah.
and would be more aggressive than the stock organic pads from Magura, but quieter than the metallic pads from Magura. So
Okay.
there's now choices on the market to where you can fine tune your Magura system. You're not just kind of locked in on their own setup. These are 2mm rotors. That's what Magura uses stock as far as thickness. Again, Galfer is offering 2mm options, so you don't have to be stuck with Magura product if you don't want to be.
Okay. And you're liking the Mazzas so far, anyway.
They look really nice, yeah. I mean, you know, the rubber feels
A lot
good.
of siping,
The
yeah.
rubber's got a kind of a nice you know, it's soft without being, you know, gooey fold over. Like it's got some resistance when you really lean into it. You can feel it kind of build up,
Right.
some resistance. But yeah, there's just a lot of little detailed siping and edges, especially
the edging is
on the inside of these
angled
corners.
quite a bit. Yeah.
So you got like these are surface edges, which are going to help give you grip on flat surfaces like roots and
Right,
rocks.
right.
But then every other knob, they actually have a full cut through sipe, and so these are going to open, and that's actually going to flare and then
Wow.
give you a little bit more grip and stability. These guys, you know, these sipes all along the kind of longitudinal plane.
Mm-hmm.
Those are also just going to help ease you over as you're transitioning from center rolling and you're starting to lean the tire.
Mm-hmm.
Those are going to allow the grip to just kind of transition with you as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to just a solid block. They're going to give you a little bit of flex as it's kind of rolling over to the centers,
Okay.
or to the corners, I mean.
Right.
These are the trail casing.
Trail
so they're
casing,
pretty
yes.
light.
2.4 rear.
2.6 front.
2.6
Yeah,
front.
we found that they went actually quite big on the front.
Yeah. And this is front specific.
No,
Rear specific.
the
No?
tread is
Really?
the same.
Tread's
so
the
they
same?
just have the Mazza tread.
Okay.
It's just bigger. That's just what they just stagger it.
It's just
So it's just
fatter.
it's just a bigger tire.
yeah.
But
Okay.
I mean, and the knobs do get bigger. So the tread does look different
Right.
between sizes. If you look at the
Yeah,
size of the
that's
knobs,
what's right, yeah.
yeah, these knobs actually are bigger,
Right.
with larger spacing in between them,
Well, yeah.
which is true for most brands.
Okay.
And then the wheels are the WeAreOne wheel.
And you took the stickers off.
We peeled the stickers.
So one thing I don't think WeAreOne is the
Yeah,
best at is
it's all
stickers.
good.
Stickers looked a little cheesy to me. But
well, the rest, obviously, the frame has nothing on it, so I think
Right.
it makes sense to kind of have a
Yeah.
bigger rim with it.
in fact, I was going to try and show you. You can see. I don't know if you can even see the logo here.
Yeah, it's very, very subtle.
It shows up on the video.
Yeah,
Gosh.
it's really subtle.
Nothing. Huh.
Yep. And actually, what they did, that's inlet. So that's they masked.
Oh my God.
They masked that and then sprayed the Cerakote and then peeled it because you can see the carbon
Yes,
fiber underneath
yes,
it.
look at that.
Yeah. So that's actually a reverse stencil, I guess you could say, or a stencil.
Wow.
Yep. That's really cool. I hadn't noticed that before without putting the light on it, but you can just see the fibers underneath it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then shock hardware also keyed like
Oh, yeah,
the
look at
rear
that.
axle, and actually same design language as
Yes.
the shape of that.
Yes.
So that little teardrop shape naturally creates resistance, so it's like a nut that's captured.
Right.
Yeah, that's very clean.
Sweet.
That's very clean.
Okay.
Yep.
The only other thing would be the seat post. I love, my bike yoke seat
Yeah,
post.
we're fans of the bike yoke for sure, especially from a service and maintenance perspective. They're a little more expensive up front than some posts, but the fact that you can reset the internals at whenever you feel like it
I've done it
means
once
that,
in a couple of years.
well, it means that you're only really ever doing just the basic service of wiper and glide rings. You're
You got
never
it.
having to really crack into the damper. So
Yep.
the running cost of the product over the life of it is much lower than having to do a $150 reverb rebuild or whatever.
Yeah.
And the performance of them is also just excellent. They're super smooth, they're super fast. They just have a great feel. So yeah, there's a lot to like in them.
That said, I haven't tried the SDG, so we'll see.
It's not bad. I mean, it's definitely not as premium of a product.
Right.
You and I have discussed the merits of bikes even coming with dropper posts before.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got a different inseam, and
Exactly,
every bike
yeah.
has its own kind of restrictions of internal depth. It's almost like pedals. At a certain point,
Saddles, same thing. I don't
Especially
understand
if
why
you-
saddles.
you get, especially if you get stuck with a post that doesn't work for you. It's you've paid
Yeah.
another couple $100 easily on the price
Right.
of the bike that now you wouldn't necessarily have wanted to spend because you would have bought something else.
Kind of a
So I don't know. It's yeah. I mean, that's a whole other concept that I've thought about as far as just like bikes should just come as chassis,
Right.
and then you finish the kit. You finish your cockpit, bar, stem, grips, seat post, saddle, pedals. Like you put your finishing touches on it because that stuff is going to vary pretty dramatically between each consumer.
Right.
But
And you were saying the post, there is an insertion depth
There's a limit.
issue.
There's a limit. Well, I mean, so the way this frame is shaped here, obviously where this pivot
Yes.
is, that's where it's going to
Won't go any
terminate.
farther
It
than
can't
that.
go any further.
Yep.
I was looking at it. I feel like they would have had to limit their design language,
Yeah.
but this could have been made more open and fatter, and they could have just made the rear end longer, which
Right.
I would have been okay with. The longer chain stays are
stays.
fine for me.
Yeah.
And created a little bit more, but this would have had to get thicker.
Yeah.
And so the visual of the bike would have changed.
Yeah.
And so, it's hard. Yeah. I mean, there's going to be a constraint to a lot of designs, that you can't really work around. And it's also going to be a combination of the brand of the dropper.
Right.
There are brands like One Up who focus on really short overall stack heights.
Right.
And so we could probably get a little bit taller post in here if we really, really wanted to. But you usually run a pretty high saddle. So
I do.
I wasn't
yeah.
too, I
don't think there's going to be a problem.
I wasn't too worried about it. If anything, you might come up a bit. We'll see.
I might raise it a little.
But it's deceiving though, because the bottom bracket on this bike is so low that everything ends up lower. Because
Okay.
it's relative,
Interesting.
Like you got to
Yeah.
remember it's a relationship.
Yeah.
It's not from the ground, it's from the BB center,
Right.
where everything has to be compared to.
Yeah. And I did go with the Supreme X-rays.
Yeah, they were actually, that was cool. They were
They
kinda-
were fine with it. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they called me last minute when they had this bike available because it kind of had opened up. We were further down the line, and then somebody was not available to take delivery. They were on vacation or whatever, and so we got bumped up in the queue. And so they were ready to ship it, and I said, "Oh, what about the spokes? We talked about the spokes," and they're like, "Hang on." But they were able to either build up a set or had a set. They were able to make it happen super quick, and it didn't really seem to slow down the delivery. So props to them for being able to kind of adjust and adapt quickly to that request. I know it's a subtlety, but
Did they send you any spares?
No.
Supreme. Well, I think Supreme, if they sell you a set.
What are you talking about? Well, you just buy sets.
But they have a spare with the set. No?
Well, there's not a set.
I thought
There's
they've
not-
always
it's not-
got.
No. There's not a set. You buy a bag of 20, or you buy a bag of 100.
Oh,
and so
okay.
it's like if we've probably just given
So
you
if you bought a
spares.
32, yeah, I see. What
I've probably
you mean,
just
yeah.
given you spares in the
probably
past.
just given me spares.
But
Okay.
yeah, I mean, you buy as many as you want to buy.
I want a spare, Adam.
Well, okay. I mean, we can figure out what the measurement is and sort you out a spare.
Yeah.
Although
Well, the
these
only
are-
time I've ever broken one actually is my own fault throwing the chain into the.
These are a 2-cross though, I believe. So I don't know if I would have that length in stock.
Yeah.
That's WeAreOne's, that's how they built their wheels. They do a 2-cross option, even though it's a 32.
It's a
spoke.
32 though.
It's
Yeah,
a
right.
32 2-cross.
Right.
I don't know. I'm usually more inclined to do a 3.
Yeah.
But that's my take on it. I think it puts less stress on each individual spoke and nipple when you have a shallower angle from the rim to the hub. So I think you get a little bit smoother ride and a little bit better durability out of it. But these probably have maybe a sharper, a little bit more direct feel, maybe a little bit more responsive.
Yep.
I mean, you could maybe say that they would weigh a tiny, tiny, tiny bit less, but I mean, we're talking about, a couple millimeter difference in spoke length over the course of the wheel. It's not going to make a huge difference, but also, yeah, I guess you could argue it is slightly lighter.
So this comes 150, 160, but you
152 on the rear, I think?
153, yeah.
53.
But you said you could go with a 170 if you wanted.
I mean, Fox does offer now. I mean, they don't sell the fork as they don't sell the 36 as a 170 anymore as a built fork. All the 170 stuff is now in the 38 platform, but they make a 170 air shaft.
Okay.
So I can put a 170 air shaft in the current 2022 and 21 Fox 36s.
Okay.
I don't know if I would sitting and
I'm not sure.
just looking at this.
I don't think I would.
Looking at the stature of the bike on the floor, it looks pretty slack already.
Yeah.
I guess.
And for what I want to do with this bike, I don't.
Although the only argument you could make is if you find that the low bottom bracket is too low, obviously raising the fork will raise the whole bike. So that is a potential option. That if you wanted to make the bike taller, you could.
Right.
Right. Because the seat angle is steep enough that you could raise the entire bike and it would not really affect the climbing dramatically.
Yeah.
Because it is a pretty steep seat angle.
Yeah, well, I'll see. But like I said, this is the closest thing. I've looked a long time for an all-around 29er. Is the closest thing I've found to something that'll bridge that gap all the way from NAR to
yeah,
cross country.
let's keep the context of all around for this area. So all around for this area means that it has to be a pretty darn good descender. Yeah. It's got to have a pretty slack head angle. It's got to have at least 160 front end, at least in my book.
Yeah.
You know, it's got to have a suspension system that's pretty supple off the top, but ramps up aggressively. So yeah, there's, you know, all arounder in this area is probably a little bit more towards the enduro end of the spectrum, if we're being honest.
Definitely.
Or a very aggressive all mountain bike.
Right.
So
well,
yeah, this one definitely checks the boxes.
The other thing you did switch out is the chainring. For an old guy like me, I need all the help I can get, so you put a 30 on there. You said a 30 or a 28 probably would be too small.
I think it might fit, but I mean, when the bike is in the stand at full top out,
there's not a lot.
And then you're down in your 12th gear here, the chain is just hovering above these little bumps here,
right.
Which is not the end of the world, because when you're in the sag, the chain's going to come up slightly.
Yeah.
So it's really not going to rub that much. I think we probably could fit a 28 in there, but it just
we'll see.
It was looking very, very tight, and
yeah.
and I thought that the 30 would be a better place to start. Cool. And this bike is supposed to be quite efficient.
Yeah.
So
no, that's the big deal with it. Yeah.
So hopefully you don't feel like you need much easier on the gearing, but I mean, I think a 28 would work if we really need to.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the limit.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we'll see. See how it weighs out. I'm gonna put it up on the scales.
We can.
Well, it's got pedals on it. I always.
Well, but we can subtract. We can do math.
Frustrated with people who weigh it with pedals.
Why?
Well, because pedals can vary all the way from like 200 to 400.
I know,
to
but
500.
we can look up the weight of the pedals and just subtract it. It's not that hard.
Okay.
That's just a little math. It's okay.
You bet. And it's got the fender, of course.
Sure. I mean, yeah. This is a ready to ride weight.
Yeah.
That's how you would describe this.
Right. I've seen it. Everything. Oh, you got kilograms.
Oh.
Yeah. Hold it steady. 3204. It looks like.
So there's probably a pound in the pedals and the fender.
Yeah.
So
31. 31.
That's about what I would expect for something like this.
Right.
I would say under 30 is probably doable with a custom build, but you're gonna have to.
Well, we don't know the tires.
Yeah, we do. I mean, these are published weights.
900.
Yeah, they're just under 1,000. They're in the nines.
Okay. So if I wanted to go lighter, the first thing I would do is swap out the tires.
Yeah, but for a bike like this, there's really not much that's dramatically lighter than that. I mean, these are actually dramatically light for how aggressive they look.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a DHF or an Assegai in an EXO casing, they're still knocking on 1,000 or more.
Yep.
In a 29.
In a 29.
So I don't know. I tend to think these are pretty decent. Yep. They make a lighter rim. They don't really orient it towards anything over like 130, 140 travel.
Right.
But they make I think it's called the, I forget which one it is. If it's the Faction or no, it's the other one.
Well, the ones you had on my Bronson, they don't make anymore.
Right, but they have a new version of that.
Oh, they have a new version?
In a 29.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they do a 28 mil internal 29, but it's a very light layup, and they say it's kind of more for aggressive trail bikes.
Yeah.
This is the Union. This is the proper enduro rim.
Yeah.
I mean, it is the more appropriate rim for this bike. Right. But yeah, I mean, you could do Tricker cranks. You could like Race Face. You could do their next SLG 5s.
Yeah.
There probably are lighter brake options. We could do more titanium hardware. We could do titanium rotor bolts and caliper bolts. So there are some other things that could potentially be explored always. But you're really you're chasing very, very small gains at that point.
Yeah,
for very high amounts of money.
Yeah.
It's those last grams that become the most expensive.
Sure.
So at a certain point, you just have to accept that the bike has an intended use, and it's going to weigh a certain amount, and it just has to be as good within that intended use as it can be. But if you start going too far outside the realms of what the bike was intended to do, you're going to compromise its performance. Like we could put a super light wheel set and tire set on here, but then you're not going to be able to get the most out of the bike.
No.
You know, this bike is intended to really kill corners aggressively. That's part of what they're shooting for. It's meant to carry speed. It's meant to be ridden aggressively, and it's like the rest of the platform has to back that up.
Right.
To really get the most out of the performance of the bike.
You got it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Adam.
Yeah.
Once
thank
again,
you. It's exciting.
You got done
Here
yourself.
It is, man.
Yeah.
New bike day.
Nah,
It's always
Pretty
good.
amazing. These are not easy to get your hands on. I
Yeah,
appreciate
unfortunately, you know, we're getting everybody excited about this product, and this is one of the last ones that was available. So these are no longer available. So don't come calling unless you want to get on the wait list.
Yeah, I
so
mean,
they basically
you can
have said
order for
that
2023.
Right, they're now taking pre-orders for their 23 production run, which they're expecting late fall, end of the year is when they'll start being able to deliver those.
Okay.
So yeah, that's but it's a good sign that the company obviously has had a lot of success with their very first product.
Yeah.
And hopefully that's going to encourage them to obviously go do more of these, but maybe explore other frame designs down the road. You know, if they can be successful with the mid platform that kind of covers a broad range of people, maybe we'll see a shorter travel bike, maybe we'll see a downhill bike. Dustin Adams, the guy who started the company, if everybody knows their World Cup history, he raced the World Cup DH. He's one of the top Canadian downhillers that there has ever been, I guess, as far as results, you would say.
Yeah.
So
Steve Smith.
well, sure, Stevie was in his, you know, he was in the top league for sure, but
Totally different world.
you know, but you would assume that if anybody had the capability of building a great downhill bike, it would be him. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see what else is in the pipeline. You know,
No kidding.
yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, next step is to get it out on the.
Yes.
Now, did you take it for a test ride at all?
Not yet. I wanted it to be perfectly clean for your video, but I probably should run it through the paces before I hand it off to you.
Definitely. Yeah. You
yes.
gotta check it out.
I will.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah. Thanks.